Okay guys, so this is my DBX 162. I got a really great deal on this, mainly because it was left in a warehouse and has been neglected for some time. You can see it's got some age on it. There's a lot of dirt and filth. There's rust, which I hope isn't on the inside of it. You can see how dirty these connectors are, and if I show you guys this power cable, it needs some work, so I can only imagine what it looks like inside, but the plan is to recap it, rebuild the power supply, and just really bring this thing back to life. So the first thing that I did was just start out by putting a new cable in here, a new power cable. So you can see I soldered it to the fuse, and then if we pan over to here, you're going to see the power connector that actually connects the 120 input voltage to the board, and it connects to those two transformers that you see right there. Now this is a quick look at the board. I haven't done anything yet. This is what it looks like right now. I did take out the meters. That was one of the first things that I wanted to do. You can see these are all 12 volt light bulbs that are mounted under there like that with those two screws. So here are the meters. You can see they're in pretty decent shape, but the connectors on the back are pretty corroded. They have, you can see they are actually copper. They have the classic copper corrosion all over them. But I will, I'll slightly rehab these, not going to do too much to them, and then obviously reinstall these when they're nice and ready to go. And you can also see here, these are all the op amp in and out cards. Now these are also something I'm going to recap. Hopefully I won't have to recalibrate them. And then these are the terminals for the inputs and outputs on the back of this. I am going to be converting these over to TRS 1/4 inch jacks, but these are the wires that connect to those pins, and you can see on the bottom there, I actually labeled them all by their color so I can make sure I put this back and I don't screw up any of the polarity of anything. And then just a little quick close-up of the back of the cards. Okay, so here are the fronts of the cards. You can see there's actually a zip tie that holds each one of them in. Obviously you got to cut that first, and then just kind of like gently rock these cards out of here, because I do want to recap these cards as well. So here's all 5 cards. The card at the top actually doesn't have any capacitors on there and a bunch of glued pots. I'm going to probably leave that alone, but there's enough capacitors here to replace, and hopefully at the very least just lower the overall noise floor. Okay, so here we have the power supply. I believe these are 15 volt positive and negative. So 2 transformers for that. Unfortunately, they are not audio transformers, but that's okay. Now down here we have 6 470 microfarad 25 volt capacitors for the power supply. So gonna be replacing all these. And then there's some other orange caps kind of spread out throughout the board that I'm gonna recap as well. So last thing I need to deal with is all these knobs. Now these are actually solid aluminum. They are great quality knobs, but they're filthy. They got a lot of corrosion all over them. They definitely need to be cleaned up. Later on, I'll show you guys cleaning those up because they really just fully come back to life. But if I can't for whatever reason, I will buy them new. So here's the front of the DBX after I took off all the knobs and switches and everything, just so I could really clean it. But you can see there's a lot of scratches all over it, but that's okay. It just adds to the character and the age of this unit. Okay, so now I've cleaned up the meters, I cleaned up the connections. Now it's time to reinstall these, and these just come in and out really nicely. You just kind of slide them through the front. And then after that, you can install this aluminum bar with these thumbnail screws on it that actually press and hold the meter in to the front of the unit. Now I did use a little bit of deoxit just to clean these up just a little further. I hit them with a wire brush. It cleaned them up enough, but I just don't want to have to go back in here and mess around with these connections. And after that, then you just got to connect the 2 terminals that connect positive and negative to the I guess you would call it the signal of the meters. So now it's time to reinstall these lights. These are the lights for the front of the VU meters. So this is what the meters look like after they've been reinstalled. So now that my capacitors have arrived, now it's time to start doing the recapping process. pulling out all the old capacitors and replacing them with new ones. I'm using this desoldering tool, which really works fantastic. It's something I just recently bought. And for this type of work, it really makes it so much easier. Now, something you definitely want to do is make sure you discharge your capacitors before you go ahead and try to remove them. Depending on the capacitor and the size, they can definitely hold enough charge. So just make sure you properly discharge the capacitors before pulling them out of there. Also, another thing that I do, I will mark the polarity of the capacitor just in case it's not on the board clearly marked somewhere, you accidentally wear it off, or it was just never marked. So these are the new capacitors, nothing too crazy. I tried to get the Nichicon, I think is how you say it, for pretty much anything in the signal path. This is power supply, so I think these are Panasonic capacitors that I replaced them with. So now we're looking at the op amp cards. Now these, I tried to get all the Nichicon capacitors for. Once again, using the desoldering tool to heat up that solder, and it literally sucks it right out of there. And these are the new capacitors that I'm putting in there. So you can see here, I'm just bending them to make them fit. There's more than enough space inside of this enclosure to make sure that it doesn't touch anything, so I'm not concerned with it. It's not perfect, but it's gonna work. So this is what it looks like with the op amp totally recapped. I'm very, very happy that I did this. At the very least, we'll just overall lower the noise floor on this. Here's another op amp card. These only have two little capacitors, those 16 volt, 22 microfarad capacitors on there. And once again, went ahead and desoldered them, soldered in some new ones. So I forgot to actually record this, but essentially I just drilled 4 holes in the back of this unit to put in these 1/4-inch TRS jacks, which is gonna fit into the modern workflow much better. I hate the little stupid pigtails with the terminals on there, the screw terminals. It just never works out very well for me. I end up bending them so much they break off. So this is what it looks like from the inside, totally rewired. I checked polarity on everything and referenced back my little color coding that I did on the back of the unit, just to make sure. And I decided not to actually even connect in the screw terminal connections. I wasn't gonna use them, and it's marked if I ever wanna go back and redo that. So now I am reinstalling all the cards. Now I did mark actually on the board and on the actual op amps themselves. I numbered them all to make sure they all go back in the same order, the same way, because these units were calibrated at one point, from the factory to make sure that they going to work. Not saying that they won't need some calibration afterwards, but at least I'm putting them back in the same order they came out. So here I'm literally just testing it. These are not the final knobs, but I did clean up all the buttons. I just wanted to make sure this thing was all working before I permanently put it back together. But you can see what it looks like now that it's been fully recapped. New op amp cards, blah, blah, blah. Everything is working great. Here, this is how I decided to actually end up cleaning the 3 knobs. I put a drill bit in backwards into my drill, and I tighten them down with the little Allen screws that are on there. And then to hold the drill down to make sure it kept spinning, I used a pipe clamp and just kind of tightened it enough until it got to the point where it started spinning this. Grabbed some steel wool, which got caught on here and spun off, which I thought was funny. But yeah, so I'm just using steel wool to really just clean these up. It really brought these knobs back to life. It was also kind of tough to find ones that were as nice and kind of fit into this character. So it was nice to be able to just use the original ones that I had gotten from this unit. They look great. Put those on there, got rid of the purple ones, which I literally was just using for testing. You can see all the 6 lights are working on the meters, and now it is finally done. So here is the DBX in action. Right now I'm using it only on drums. So it is a drum bus compressor. Now this is only camera audio, but I just wanted to show you guys that, it is working. Now, of course, I'm going to be doing a full, video on it, and I just wanted to learn it first, get used to this. This is obviously different from the other DBX products that I have. I have quite a few. So there will be a video coming up of me using this. I also want to see, I think it's going to be great for drum bus, but maybe, I also might like it on, I don't know, maybe drum bus parallel compression, or maybe it'll sound great on vocals, because I do really like the DBX 160X on kick, snare, and vocals. So maybe this might be a great bus compressor for that too. So I want to play around with that. And then of course I will make a video, essentially showing off what it can do. So anyways, look for that video. But otherwise, guys, thanks for watching. Of course, if you guys want to ask me any questions, leave them in the comments below, or you can also find True Sound Studios on Instagram. It's definitely still a great way to get a hold of me. It's really easy to share pictures and do voice memos and stuff like that. So as always, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.